Hello and welcome, my name is Lewis and today we're going to be doing a new series, the third new series, and this one's going to be called LAPH Chooses. So this is going to be kind of a mixed bag, so it'll just be whatever is convenient for the week or whatever subject I'm looking at currently, and we'll just kind of go loosely with this one. So this week I thought we could paint a nice photograph of a skull that I took. This is actually a Proko skull and I just got it in a cardboard box with a little USB light on it. So we're gonna have a good whack at painting this. We're gonna see if we can try out some new digital brushes as well, or brush techniques at least, in Procreate. So without further ado, let's begin. So I'm gonna start with just some basic light line work in my regular do everything brush, with just some light black, and when I draw skulls I like to simplify them with a particular shape, so something like that that really details it down. And it's always nice to add these kind of lines, ribbon lines, to kind of straighten everything up. The skull, like the face, will follow a basic rule of thirds. It may be slightly different to the full face just because it's got slightly different dimensions. So you can see that now we have the basic landmarks in the skull, a couple of ribbon lines to help me out, and we've started from that very simple shape and built out into this nice big detailed set of landmarks and features for our skull. Now it's not exactly the same as the skull in the photograph, but that doesn't matter because, you know, you could have viewed it at a different angle, it could be a slightly different skull. No one's comparing it to the original photograph. As long as your artwork shows good composition and good knowledge, you should get by. And the more you try and kind of copy a picture detail for detail, the more difficult you're going to make it for yourself without any reward. So now I'm just going to go in on a layer above and start really fleshing out the big values. I'm going to be thinking of starting with the lights and the shadows. So we'll start with two tones and then we'll go to the middle of that with the half tones, and we'll just slowly expand that range, working from the outermost edges to the innermost details. So our goal here is to start with two values and narrow it down to a theoretically infinite amount of values. So here we have our basic, pretty much two-tone, but there is our third tone here, readout of the skull. I've started with the white and then the black, and then used the mid-tone that was already in the background as the mid-tone. So let me just draw out a little ball for us so I can kind of demonstrate how these three values will work. So we've got our mid-tone as a base, our light hitting from the top right here, and then the shadow will be on this side. And that's the basic three tones that we're currently working with. Just those three. And with that, we can shape anything. I've also worked on a little bit of the background, trying to guide the viewer's attention towards the eyes. As you can see, there's kind of a brightness here reaching round and a brightness here reaching round, and then this big dark kind of V pointing us straight into the eyes of the skull. So that's just part of the basic composition of the picture. Now what we're going to do is start working on our edges, because there's not really any edges in this, so we're going to work on our hard, firm and soft edges, and we're going to start expanding the value range that we have to incorporate more detail. So at this point we're getting quite recognisable as a skull. We've got our edges in, and a lot of the details there in the light. There's a few shapely changes that I want to make, maybe even break out the liquify. But first maybe get some of the values in on the shadows, some of those occlusion shadows, get that working and put together. And soon enough, what we want to be doing is getting all the way down to pitch black. So we can have these nice occlusion shadows that show exactly where the bottom of the sphere is. So from now on, we're just going to be adding more values, getting the shape a little bit more correct, and seeing how we can kind of mystify the painting, especially with the starting of a new brush. Here, as you can see, it's kind of more like a painting. Mixes a bit more like a soup, so it's less like glazing like the other brush I was using. So let's continue. So at this point, we've got nearly every value we need in the painting. We've gone all the way down to black and we've gone all the way up to white. So now it's just a case of getting all of our shapes right, making sure the proportions are there. And what I'm just doing is I'm looking at the image and looking at my painting and seeing that those shapes are value of the same, so I can make sure that the proportions are correct and it ends up looking like a good human skull and having enough lightness. As you've seen throughout the process, we've started with just the 2 values, and in the shadow there was no detail that you could make out. But now you can sort of start to see where the like the zygomatic bone is going to come in around there. Do you know what I mean? You can see where the jaw ends. There's all these new bits of detail that have been brought in by adding those values in the shadows. So now what we're going to do is just finish off polishing it, getting all of the details in, bringing all of the values into shape in the shadows, because I still need to get a lot darker, and really giving it the finishing touch, as well as defining the teeth, which have been giving me a little bit of trouble, but we're slowly pulling them together just by trying to simplify them into basic shapes and then get them more detailed as we go along. And with them especially, we're going to have to watch out that we don't put too much contrast there, because then the teeth are going to be combating everything else in the image. So that's where we're at the moment. So we're just going to carry on with the teeth and getting the detail in the shadows, and I'll see you once we've nearly got there. Okay, so it's the next day now and we've picked it up. We're just going to carry on detailing and getting some of these values in. Getting the final details in as well, like these little cracks here. We'll get them to final size. So we'll get the nice little like detailed ones in the eye sockets going along that you can see everywhere around the skull in the common places, and getting them looking nice and detailed and the lighting correct on them. So that's where we're going to head from here, as well as getting the background and the composition right. So I'm thinking of getting the back of the head a lot darker, so the back of the skull doesn't have quite as much contrast. You know, just the basic stuff like that. Neatening it up, adding the final edges, final contrast, final values. Getting these teeth in has certainly been quite difficult. Definitely an area of tension for this piece. Just trying to get the first patterns even, and the locations of them was quite hard to start with, but making them into the individual teeth is always going to be quite difficult, because there's so many identical units that are all going to be slightly different, and if there's too many or too little of them, or one's in just a slight wrong position, is going to be very noticeable. So getting them right has been a really key factor for me, and a lot of the time people can fall into the pitfall with teeth of just getting too much contrast. So also just balancing the contrast in and making sure it's a realistic amount of contrast and not going to pull the eye from the other parts of the scene and demand the viewer's attention has been quite the task. So I feel like we're reaching the point at which I can almost say that the teeth are ready for their final polish. So to get these cracks in, I've just gone another layer, and it's important to remember with stuff like this, with the cracks, they're still a three-dimensional form, so I can't just go about it by drawing the cracks straight on. There's actually a darker edge to the cracks and a lighter edge where the light is hitting it. So if I just went through with dark lines, it would make the cracks look 2D like they're painted on. but to get them looking the way they should in 3D, we've got to actually put in the lighter side of the cracks, which is a little bit tougher than it might sound to remember. Often we can forget that you can't just paint things like cracks on. So what I've done is I've gone in a separate layer and just gone through with all the dark edges of the cracks, and now with the same layer and the same brush, I'm just going through and putting the lighter edges on the cracks, and I'm just going to slowly work them until they're the right shape and each line's the right thickness, and make sure that they're all facing the same way. And then once I'm quite happy with it, I'll merge it with the layer underneath with the actual layer of the skull. Okay then, I'm going to call it finished there. Probably somewhere just under 3 hours of work, but I like where we are at the moment. The cracks are in, the final details are in. You can see the kind of level of detail we work to isn't too high, but then once you zoom out, there's absolutely no way to tell, which is exactly a good point to stop. Actually, I'm going to leave that little imperfection. So we started with the two tones, and we've widened our values and gotten more and more detail based off of the image. Ours isn't completely identical, it's just similar in patterns and in shape and slightly in lightness. I hope you enjoyed this and could gain from it in some way, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.